Friday's here. Hello there, good afternoon, and welcome to The Pulse. We are coming to you live from our studios here in Accra. We're on your digital terrestrial TV because we're free to air. It's on DSTV channel 421, Go TV channel 144. This is Joy News, independent, fearless, and credible. Coming up this afternoon on The Pulse, June 3 disaster is still in the shadows. That's the warning from the Bureau of Public Safety as the country marks 7 years since the unfortunate fire and flood disaster happened. Well, coming your way as victims recount their experiences. Also this afternoon as well, we revisit the age-old debate on Ghana's development as we explore varied options on the best approach in fixing the country's challenges. We'll have two guests joining us on that matter. We'll share that with you here on The Pulse. And if you are in the habit of power theft, this is the time to desist. That's the warning from the Electricity Company of Ghana as it sends a strong caution to persons engaged in illegal activities which are having a toll on electric supply across the country.
To the business of committing illegalities, don't do it. You see, the punitive measures, and at this point, you see, I need to add that the ECG has sent a proposal through the Ministry of Energy.
Well, coming your way, I am Blessed Sogah. The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities, Digni Lu, affordable, safe sanitation. This afternoon as well, we're streaming on all of our social media handles. It's at JoyNews on TV, also on YouTube and on all of our platforms. Join us with the hashtag The Pulse. I am Blessed Sogah. Always a pleasure serving you here on The Pulse. Please stay. Well, it's rather unfortunate, but June 3 disaster is still in the shadows. That's the warning from the Bureau of Public Safety as the country marks 7 years since the deadly fire and flood disaster happened in Accra. The inferno left more than 150 persons dead and many others missing. Victims continue to face difficulties. While my colleague Samuel Kojo earlier today has been speaking to some of the victims who are calling for compensation.
And it caused a lot of devastation. As you can see, all the scraps here are remnants of the cars that got burnt on that day. Today, 7 years on, we are here to interact with victims of the disaster.
Nti yadru ase na eflade ye no mechanic hase nti ye na ebegyina ase nti agina ho na me wife say mindani me chi na me hwe na ejao mindani me nkwa na eja beto mitiso me ho hwibiem nti me expect team na 37 na 37 so me ko da on sa time no na me nim say my wife ne me brother me busa for o mewu ndi me dawa ebe discharge me sana psychologist for ya mo ba me nche na me nim de okoso de na but yanka be say my wife no omo wa admission reach na me so mo 37 ndi na me so me gidi sa da ebe discharge me na chen so my wife me busa for o me film ndi na nyizi na me di bibia edi ma nyame set de nyame na e ma nyame na ejenti.
And on that day, he was here with the wife, child, and a brother. When all of a sudden the wife said, "Fire!" Immediately he turned. There was fire on his head, and that's everything he recalls. By the time he realized, he was at 37. So many operations. He's gone through 20 of such operations just to recover to be how he is today. He says that he lost a huge thing on the skull there. We are showing to you on the screen now. That's his skull as it is today. From that particular accident, it's quite a huge one. You need to have be brave enough to watch this. He says that whilst at the hospital, they didn't tell him that the wife, the child, and the brother have all died. It was after, when he was being discharged, when psychologists came to him and worked on him to understand what was happening. He says they only paid his medical bills, but he has not received anything like compensation, and because of lack of funds, he's not able to go for reviews.
I'm a father of a disease.
Okay.
That very fateful, that very sad Wednesday, I was at work and the rain started. It rained in the morning, and in the evening it started again. And my son is also going to work. So he was going to work that evening. He's going to work that very day. So I was there. It was raining heavily, and my wife too, and is in the market. So, in fact, I'm willing to come and see them because I know where they are. It's very, very distant. I couldn't come. The next morning, I had a call from my wife that the water has taken my son away. So my son, he didn't burn, but he was drowned. He's drowned. Yes, by the water.
Well, very chilling accounts there, but we understand that the Ministry of Works and Housing has released a statement on this. In fact, we can bring that to you, excerpts of it right now on your screens. And you see a statement there from the Ministry of Works and Housing, which is dated June 3, 2022. And excerpts are, of course, indicating that today actually marks the 7th anniversary of the June 3 twin disaster, which claimed over 150 lives following the flooding and an explosion at the Goil filling station at the Kwame Nkrumah Circle. As we mark another anniversary of the said sad incident, I wish to, on my own behalf and on behalf of the government and the people of Ghana, express my deepest condolences to the families and friends of the victims of the disaster. Our thoughts and prayers remain with them. But here's the point that government is making, that the Akufo-Addo government remains committed to honoring the memory of our departed friends by continuing and intensifying the efforts to find lasting solutions to the perennial flooding challenges in Accra and across the country. It is in this spirit that government is currently collaborating with the World Bank to invest about $200 million to implement the Greater Accra Resilience and Integrated Development Guide project, which will mitigate flood risk and also, as we are understanding, address the sanitation and solid waste management challenges in the Odo drainage basin where the unfortunate event occurred. And we understand that while efforts to procure a contractor for dredging of the Odo under international competitive bidding is underway, dredge masters would also continue with their ongoing engagement to clear solid waste in the area. Additionally, government is indicating that it has taken some steps which will deal and reduce the volume of waste in the area. So that's the indication we're getting from government. A statement actually signed by Senso Bonchi, who's the sector minister for Works and Housing. But we understand that the Bureau of Public Safety is raising a number of concerns. In fact, the Bureau of Public Safety is talking about the fact that till date, after 7 years, state agencies in their efforts in terms of handling emergencies are not properly coordinated. The Bureau is also raising concerns about how largely the state has actually failed to pay proper tribute to over 200 lives that were lost in the disaster, with less than 40% of actionable recommendations achieved. So let's speak to Executive Director for the Bureau of Public Safety, Nanaya Wakwada, who's joining us live via Zoom now. Thank you, Nanaya, for your time. So first off, let's start with the statement that we're receiving from the Works and Housing Ministry. It appears that the government says through this GARID project, which is amounting to some $2 million, we may finally have a solution to perennial flooding and possibly avert the recurrence of the June 3 disaster. It sits well with you?
Well, let me say good afternoon to your viewers. I must say that we should take the government statement, or if you like, the Ministry of Works and Housing statement with a pinch of salt, which, to the extent that it's been 7 long years after that disaster, And today, as we mark the 7th, anniversary, we are now hearing something that we have been hearing all the time. Those things now have been rehashed and presented to us, should not give us any hope. We should actually hold their feet to fire until what must be done is done. The Ministry of Works and Housing, and I'm going to be very charitable in this discourse, because we find it extremely disturbing that there are low-hanging fruits that this ministry is supposed to take, where in their statement they indicated that it's a shared responsibility and people must, be part of this solutions game. It was recommended in the report, in part 4 of the policy recommendation, that the Ministry of Works and Housing itself is supposed to amend the building code such that every home now, today, it will be mandatory to harvest rainwater to some extent. 7 long years, nothing has happened. And today, we are being told of huge sums of money that they are prepared to throw at programs, which in any case might end up will not see anything anyway.
But actually, at least to be fair, it appears that government has taken some steps, isn't it?
But they've been taking some steps since 2015. What have you seen? Why is it the first time we are celebrating and we are marking the anniversary of the death of over 250 Ghanaians? We did it the first year, we did it second year, we did it third year, we did it fourth year. In all of those years, they told us something they were doing. And Kofi, I'm sorry, this is something I live and eat. We've been following government's commitment year on year when we marked the June 3rd disaster. Okay? The place where the disaster occurred, we have said time and again that at least that particular location, people must have a conscience. The state itself must pay tribute to those people and ensure that no lynching takes place there, at least just that small enclave. What do we see? Nothing. Right, the local assemblies, I mean the TMAs, the AMAs, and the MMDCs, was it not recommended for them to take penal actions against officers who approve of buildings to be cited in waterways? 7 long years, we have the president only 2 weeks ago issuing an order for MMDCs to go out and break all buildings in waterways. Who approve of those buildings to be cited in those places?
But you do agree that this is a compounded problem, a problem that this government, for instance, is faced with. So if you have such a directive coming through from the president, I guess it's not necessarily a late response as you would want to describe it.
Well, Kofi, I'm sorry once again. It is a very, very late response. Let the president fire all his MMDCs and replace them. And let's see what happens in our country next year at the rainy season. Just because of flooding. Let the president fire all MMDCs in areas where flooding occurred as a result of buildings in waterways, as a result of indiscriminate littering of plastic waste, and see what happens in our country. That is what we are talking about. And so we look, the lives of over 200 Ghanaians going waste, with the lives of many more, changed forever, as you were showing some on TV. You think this is a matter that we should pay lip service to? You think this is a matter that we should just issue press statements with flamboyant, fantastic plans and intentions? We must lace our boots and fix the problem on the ground. That is how simple it is.
And what's striking is that right. And what's striking is that from your outfit, the Bureau of Public Safety, you're of the view that, in fact, June 3 is still in the shadows. Then you go to point to how, for instance, the emergency services are not well coordinated in dealing with such a matter if it comes up again. That's dangerous to us, isn't it?
It is. and that is why I'm very passionate about this. It is. It is. When disasters happen, you have NADMO going, you have ambulance going, you have police going, and sometimes the coordination is poor. And sometimes the coordination is poor. So we have said, as a country that has a national disaster management policy, I think that we should work to get all these institutions working, collaborating effectively, and working in harmony when there is a disaster. We saw what happened in Apiati. We saw what happened during the atomic explosion. We saw LAC, we saw Takrady, and several others. The coordination has not been very well organized. And I think that we have not learned largely from the incidents of June 3rd. We have not learned largely from it. That is why we say that government has not paid adequate tribute to the lives of over 250 people that were lost in a single day.
But then the issue about compensation, is that what we should be focusing on right now? Or perhaps there should be another priority as we speak?
Well, I think, look, the people who have died and the survivors of these people, the state has a responsibility to cushion them. The state has a responsibility to put those people back on their feet. Even though we have not followed adequately the matter of compensation, it also keeps coming up every now and then. And I think that as a state, we must live up to our responsibility, live up to our mandate to make sure that people who, through no fault of theirs, just found themselves at the wrong place at the wrong time, having gotten themselves involved in such a disaster, we do not leave them to their fate. For God's sake, on that day, it could have been you, it could have been me who were trapped there.
There's a broader conversation around congestion in Accra. The fact that it's partly contributing to perhaps what we witnessed in the past and likely to push for another incident to happen in terms of the disaster. We're not wishing for that, but then obviously proactive steps ought to take place. Should that include, for instance, a drastic measure to decongest the national capital, Accra?
Well, congestion is a technical word, and I think that when you use it in this context, we have to see it as a very subjective word to use. There is no capital city in the world that I have visited which is not congested. But even in that congestion, there are proper plans and proper infrastructure in place. The cities, the famous cities across the world that we see getting flooded, the amounts of rain that floods those cities, if same rains are placed on Accra, the city or the whole city of Accra will vanish. That's what we must understand. And so even Accra is congested, there is a need to decongest, but there is even more a greater need to ensure that we properly manage solid waste. This is an issue that in the June 3rd report, it is there, a ministerial communication indicating that our plastic waste have reached alarming or catastrophic proportions and that there is a need to urgently manage it. 7 years on, we have not seen any significant action being taken by the state. Look at the footages, scrolling on your screen right now, and just appreciate the amount of plastic waste in this flood. Then you know that we are actually paying lip service to the dead.
Right, and let's talk about, for instance, the recommendations within the committee's report. Obviously, after June 3, there were some recommendations. For instance, part 4, we talks about the need to clear buildings on the waterways and all of that. And in fact, looking at the report in itself in its entirety, it appears that there are some outstanding matters for government to deal with, right?
Yes, several outstanding matters. For instance, I would want to see, some of them are joined with others. There are a lot of recommendations, but some of them are key. One of the key ones is pressing penal actions against officers who approve building permits in waterways. It has not happened. If we can do this, so much more will be solved. Number two, making it mandatory for houses to at least harvest rainwater to some extent. How difficult is this? We have not done this because this one, we don't need money from the World Bank to do this, but we have not done it. Solid waste management. I think that in recent times, under the leadership of the current, I think Mr. Korte, the AMA chief, he's doing something in his part. But that problem, the flooding problem, is not just in Accra. It is in most parts of Ghana. So the kind of actions that he's taking, we want to see that replicated across the country. Okay? EPA, NPA, Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority, all these regulators in charge of, approving for filling stations and, gas filling stations and things to be cited. We're supposed to have a committee, a permanent committee, according to the recommendation, set up by the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology to supervise the activities of these regulators. I am yet to hear of any such committee. The NPA, the National Petroleum Authority, was supposed to ensure that in collaboration with the Ghana National Fire Service and other training providers, fuel or filling station attendants, receive safety certifications periodically. That is also yet to happen as far as I'm concerned. And so in the midst of these critical things that are not happening, one cannot sit comfortably and say, well, we've seen some $200 million in the pipeline, we've seen some 450,000 or million Ghana cedis somewhere, so let's all go to sleep. The state is doing something. I'm telling you, the state can do more. And as far as we have the lives, the blood of 250 or so Ghanaians, calling on us, the actions that the state has taken in the last 7 years is appalling. And June 3rd disaster, another one left in the dark.
Nana, I would have wished that we wrap up, but just hold on for me. What we'll do is that we'll take the aspect of public education, but it's been raining, a wonderful coincidence. So let's get the reaction of the public about the situation wherever you find yourself. In fact, if you're watching us now, particularly within the national capital Accra, just give us a call, 0302 211 691 or 2. Let's find out what the situation is where you are and what your concerns are. And then we could take that right away. So you have the numbers right there on your screens. But Nanayo, as we wait for the calls to come through, there's the aspect about public education, because government may not be able to do everything. So for the individual aspects, what are we to be, on the lookout for as members of the general public?
Well, I think we must understand that we live in this together, and that the planet Earth is where we live. It's made up of 75% water. And so if we do not live in harmony with the earth, when the rains come down, water will always find its path. Number one, solid waste. We must do all our best to make sure that when we generate waste, we dispose of these waste appropriately. Number two, let us not, misuse our influences and our wealth by taking up spaces that hitherto are reserved for ecological sustenance or for sustainability. So people take cash in on their money and they buy spaces, plots of land in areas that are not supposed to be built on. Let us allow the spaces that we are not supposed to build to remain so. And number three, I would want to encourage every other citizen at the personal level that we must do well to build community where we are. If we build community, we will be able to know when the rains are coming, where to move, who to call on, and who to help whenever the floods come.
Nanayo, just hold on. Let's bring in the calls now. I'm sure that you'd be minded to react to some of the issues that will come up from our callers. Adam, surprisingly, is joining us from the Upper West region. Let's find out his concerns. Adam, what do you have to share with us?
Yes, please. This water lock, I don't know whether some people intentionally build the place or I don't know. But looking at it, they're not supposed to know where the water is passing. Sometimes from the culverts that they are making, the new culverts that are doing, they should give a directive to the water that where the water is supposed to pass, so that they'll give a way for the water to pass, leaving where the buildings are. Now, some of them, the contractor will come and put palm and other thing on the road, block the water. They will not even come to check whether there's water passing there or not. End of the day, when they come to talk, they then say, oh, they have not given them money to work on. What about the water that is taking people's cars and human being life? So sometimes we do deliberately work and let it, stop the people to be suffering on that issue. So I don't know how they will be found that solution to.
Adam, thank you for giving us a call. So the numbers are on your screen right now, 0302211691 or 2. You can just give us a call and then we'll find out what your concerns are. And as we wrap up on this conversation, Nana Akwada, let me bring you in. So first of all, that caller, Adam, is talking about how we build on waterways. Generally, I'm sure that even here in the national capital, that's the concern as well. So as we wrap up, your comments on that and your message to the general public.
Well, I think when it comes to waterways, I've indicated that clear, that it's an enforcement issue, which the MMDCs or the Land Use and Special Authority folks are actually not doing what they are supposed to do. In the recommendations of June 3rd, it is stated clear that press penal actions against officers who approve of buildings to be sited in waterways. Within 2015 and 2022, a lot of buildings have sprung up in waterways and in unapproved areas. Who approved for those buildings to be sited? Let's bring them to book and then see whether moving on, people will be approving for buildings to be sited.
Dana, one more question coming through from William from Cape Coast has a point to raise. I'm sure you would like to react to that. William, what's your concern? William?
I'm from Cape Coast.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, let's hear you.
I'm saying I am very much happy about the effect view of these perennial flooding. But I think it has gone beyond just breaking houses and other things. The concept is that those days we used to have trees and some bits of forest patches all over that collect some water and then release them as and when the level of the flood goes down. This time, all these places, whether through building or built up area, we have covered all those areas. And so when it rains, it creates this problem. I beg the government of the day must employ the services of the environmentalists, the geographers, and other groups. Done everything in the hands of the engineers, town planners. This use the geographers. They can tell you how much water a particular piece of land can hold at a particular time, and then release them as and when it is. In fact, as we keep on breaking buildings, we give permits for people to also erect new ones, and especially if you are connected, politically connected, who is going to pull down your building? And then are we saying just pulling down buildings is what is going to solve the entire problem? The last time when I listened to some discussion, they said when it rains at the mountains in Akrapim, the next minute it means Accra is going to be flooded. I beg to differ, because sometimes 30 minutes of rain, you can't tell me the runoff from Akrapim mountains can get to Accra and then flood the area. There is a peculiar issue. We must sit down, plan well. Today it is no longer Accra. Because we are having our share. Kumasi used to have it. Last year they had it. Other areas that like the northern region and then upper west and east. So let's find out what is actually the problem. Our forest covers, they are very, very, very good to hold up water, rainwater that you have no idea. Take for instance, imagine this stretch of Kakum forest is wiped off through any other activities, galamsey or building another thing. It means the amount of rainwater that will be collected there as it is now will no longer be collected. It will run off and destroy our things. And we keep on crying. And again, those who are also building in waterways, we tend to cover everything. Ramsar site, waterlogged area, marshy area, because we have the wall without. We fill these areas, we rent mansions on it, create problems for ourselves. What kind of people are we trying to be?
All right,
Thank you.
William, thank you for giving us a call. So we understand that some parts of Domi has also flooded. We'll be bringing in some of those visuals shortly. But then let's deal with more callers. Tell us what the situation is where you are right now. Hello? Okay, but what you have on your screens right now is the situation at Domi Crossing, and this is a real-time visual. So this is the situation just after a few minutes or so of, I don't want to call it a downpour, but that's the situation that we are witnessing there. And Nanaya Akwada, it appears that it buttresses the point you're making about how we're not prepared and we're not learning the lessons.
And I'll tell you that I'll tell you that if we want to demonstrate commitment to ending this perennial flooding or seeing a significant improvement in this perennial flooding, the president must bite the bullet. He must take steps to fire his municipal, metropolitan, and district assembly representatives. The district chief executives and all. He should take steps to fire them and tell them, the new one that he will hire, that I don't want to see
next year. And my brother, let us see that beyond this, whether we will see flooding like we see in our cities and our towns, like we are seeing every year. Okay. I tell you, the work of the MMDC is not just to take care of flooding, but it is the one single action that when it occurs, we lose so much. It brings businesses to a halt. It's affecting our GDP so much. Right. If we fire MMDs over flooding, we see a significant improvement.
Nanaya Akwada, I'm grateful for your time. So let's wrap up with this last two calls that we have. Haruna is from Haruna, what's the situation where you are?
What I can say is that the politicians are our problem. They don't have the political will to do what is right. They will see a building strengthen up in the valley, like take water, and they cannot do anything. They have the power to demolish it, to stop them, but they will not do it because they will go back to them for vote. And you will use this to kill someone. A lot of people will lose their lives because of your vote. I don't know how to describe it, but they should act in their work, do what is right for all of us. If not, we are saying everything, you do everything, but it will never stop.
Well, thank you for joining us, and would like to obviously caution at this moment that if you're driving, you need to be cautious, and of course, if you are also within the Domi community, you might want to step out with a lot of precaution. So that's all we have for you on that issue. But for now, let's focus on energy. The Electricity Company of Ghana is cautioning the public against illegal activities which disrupt electricity supply across the country. The state's power distributor says various forms of power theft, including illegal connections, have denied and actually dented the image of ECG, which is seeking to become the most reliable power distributor in the country. Well, earlier today, I caught up with the Accra West Regional Manager of the Electricity Company of Ghana, Ebenezer Ghani, who disclosed that a number of punitive measures will be enhanced in the coming days to deal with persons engaged in power theft.
The Electricity Company of Ghana is at the tail end of the value chain when it comes to electricity distribution in the southern part of Ghana. Now, what this means is that we are the group which collects the revenue which feeds the whole value chain. And we achieve this by installing meters which would measure energy consumed, and then we bill appropriately. So any challenge with that aspect of our business doesn't augur well for the whole value chain. So when we talk about the illegalities which, occur, we can, among others, refer to meter tampering, direct connections, bypassing of meters, deliberately connecting wrong polarities. That's a bit technical, but it occurs especially in factories. Unauthorized service connections, and unauthorized loading of credit. These are some of the illegalities we can identify within our network, which don't inure to our collection of revenue.
But which of them would you say is very common with us?
They all, occur, but meter bypass appears to be the one which is the favorite of our customers. Yeah.
But it's interesting to take a look at the factors. What would you say are the factors that allow or say make it possible for customers to engage in some of these acts as you're pointing out?
Yeah, we can consider these factors from the customer's viewpoint and also from ECG's viewpoint. Now, when you talk about the customers, what factors? The customer is at home late at night, runs out of credit, and he feels the time is not proper for him to go out looking out for credit to vend. So he does something funny in order to get power supply. So, situations where friends would lure colleagues into undertaking illegalities because they've done it and they've seen it in their own mind to be good for them. There are cases too where we have what we call guru boys, these local electricians who provide or facilitate this service. That is, they undertake direct connections for people, meter bypasses for people, etc. Now, from the ECG angle, I can talk about the lack of visibility. So if customers don't see us around, it tends to give them a false sense of security, if I can call it that way, where they feel free to do anything to the meter. Okay? And there's also this aspect where if there is a surfeit of if there's a challenge with gaining access to vending points, then the customer doesn't want to go to that trouble and would rather, tend to commit an illegality to have power available to him.
And it's interesting that you're talking about this because
all the partners in this value chain, there's this thing also, this danger of fire outbreaks. So most of the time, those committing these illegalities are not adept at technicalities, and they may take steps which would create the situation where there would be a fire outbreak. And of course, it's blamed on electricity, but the actual cause is the illegality which was undertaken. It could lead to power outages. It could lead to damage of our equipment. And all these adds cost to our maintenance activities. Last but not the least is the loss of image for ECG, because the illegality may lead to other challenges which may not be known to the customers affected, and they would therefore blame ECG for the challenges they are facing.
Obviously, when your light goes off, it's ECG, yes. But then these illegal activities could affect you and then cause some disruptions in terms of electricity supply. But then I'm sure that as ECG, you're also concerned about checking the system and making sure that these illegal activities are dealt with. Are you taking some immediate steps to deal with these practices?
Over the years, we've had certain measures in place to deal with such issues. It ranges from stringent measures to more, should I say, cooperative measures, so to speak. So we have in place processes to prosecute and surcharge those who are arrested. We also try to ensure that we provide education for all customers to get them to appreciate the challenges the committing of such illegalities could lead to and could introduce into the network. One other thing we have in place is also this thing we've instituted of providing an incentive for those who would report illegalities.
There's a reward for informants?
Yeah, there's a reward for informants, and that reward is 6% of what accrues from punishing those who are caught. So if you report an illegality and it is affirmed as such and we deal with it, there's a 6% reward awaiting you for helping us to sort of deal with this canker.
And would you say that you've been enjoying support from the public in that regard?
To a large extent, yes. Because, see, one of the factors which I failed to mention earlier on is this one where there's a sort of peer pressure.
Okay.
So friends tell friends that, I've committed this illegality and I'm taking power for free. Once in a while, you have people who are committed to our national development and would come in and report that this is what is happening. Okay. It helps. And over the years, it has been a big factor in our activities. But the most important approach, or the best of our approaches, or the most effective of our approaches, has been monitoring of our customers. So we have programs in place where we monitor customers and monitor their usage of power, and in so doing, we are able to check these activities and also catch those who are undertaking them.
But I'm not sure that when we are diagnosing the problem, it would only be from the side of the consumers. Probably within ECG itself, you may have some of your elements or staff, corroborating some of these acts. So are you taking steps as well to look within your system and to see where the faults are and where the loopholes are so you can block them?
Well, there's an interesting one, and the accounts have an adage which has two variants. One says, if you be a mensa, the other says, if you be a monse. So obviously, we could have staff who, one way or the other, could assist people in indulging in this. It is not impossible. So we continually educate our staff too. And anyone caught undertaking such an activity is dealt with. There are internal mechanisms for dealing with this. But we would rather focus on making it difficult for people to undertake this. So going forward, for example, as a way of taking out the human element, we want to introduce and use technology. So if we are monitoring our meters centrally through a system, then whether it's a staff who goes out to do it or it's an external individual who is attempting to, disrupt our operations,
you detect it quickly.
We have a means of detecting it.
And I'm sure that you've started some of these processes, so you are in a position to assess what the impact has been. Looking at the figures, from previous years and now, would you say that these measures that, for instance, that you're talking about, including technology, is beginning to yield results? And are you able to share
we've
some
just
of them
started with the process of using technology. So as of now, it's difficult to come up with figures. But we had a pilot, an interesting situation. Recently, we had a pilot program undertaken within our Achimota district. We installed a few meters, prepaid meters, which had the capacity to be monitored. And over 50% of the meters, just a few days after we installed it, were tampered with. And without visiting, we could see it from
your system.
From our system. So it is going for it. That is something which would really help us. Now we rely on targeted visits, okay? But as our customer base continues to grow, and as the teams get more sophisticated, that is not going to be very effective. So yeah, the way forward is technology.
Yeah, and I'm sure that in the coming days you'll be rolling out some more measures. But what really is a target for this year, for maybe Accra West that you want to share?
When you talk about illegalities and targets, it's an interesting one. I'll give you some figures, but let's look at this.
Okay.
If our education is good, if our threat of punitive measures is heard and felt, then illegalities will be zero.
So it's
but
more.
We've based on prior, observations.
Right.
We've set ourselves a target of identifying and retrieving about a little over 11 gigawatt hours this year. Now that translates, hopefully, that could translate into the region of 9 to 10 million Ghana cedis. That's a lot of money. And that's money which would help us really do a lot to improve our services to our customers.
Yeah, and just as we're indicating earlier, this is not just an effort that should be coming from within ECG. I mean, the public must also help you in that regard. So for those who observe some of these illegal activities, how do they reach out to you? Are your doors always open? Or how could they help stop these practices?
Thank you very much. In answering that, I need to point out the fact that, yes, the stakeholders go beyond ECG. And the Ministry of Energy, under the direction of the Honorable Minister, for example, has set up a task force, a national task force, to help us, undertake the exercise of catching those undertaking illegalities. So that task force is in place. On a day-to-day basis, you can walk to any of our offices, our district office, our regional office, and talk to the manager. They are there to assist, and they are there to listen, to help us all curb this, unfortunate activities.
And also, just on that point as well, we know that early this year you put up a task force that was going after some defaulters and all of that. How far with that exercise, and what's the status as we speak?
That exercise is ongoing. They're actually moving around the various operational areas. They will be in Accra West very soon.
Okay.
Now, there are two ways to look at this.
Okay.
I give a date now, then those doing the illegalities will start. But they should, you see, when you get into it, you enjoy it. So whatever be the case, we'll get them. There are two contact numbers to which are in play now, whereby through which customers can contact us. ECG has a call center, and the call center number, I believe by now, is well known. 0302 611 611. You can report your fault. You can also report illegalities there. The National Task Force itself, the number to them is 055 144 4011.
So anyone at all could
anyone at all can call that number, report the incident, and we'll take care of it.
Well, we need to wrap up on the conversation, but I'm sure that you have an advice for customers of ECG out there.
The advice is simple. If you are into the business of committing illegalities, don't do it. You see, the punitive measures, and at this point, I need to add that the ECG has sent a proposal through the Ministry of Energy to the EC, which is consolidating a new draft LI. And we are asking for the punitive measures to be enhanced. People are going to be punished more. People will be prosecuted and their names will be published in the dailies. If you want your family members and your friends to identify and see you as, one who steals power, over to you. Don't do it. The other side of it is that I indicated it can lead to fire outbreaks. So in doing this, you can be actually a source of danger to yourself and to society. Don't do it.
And that's a caution from the Electricity Company of Ghana. Now, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources is courting the support of all students in the country in this year's Green Ghana Day exercise. Deputy Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Benito Usubio, says over 8 million hectares of forest in Ghana has dire consequences to livelihoods and mankind and serious implications for climate change. Speaking at the launch of the 2022 One Student, One Tree initiative at Agri Memorial Senior High School in Cape Coast, the Deputy Minister indicated there's an urgent need to make continuous efforts to reverse this dangerous trend.
According to the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, the impending Green Ghana Day is to encourage students to develop the habit of planting trees and nurture them to maturity as part of efforts to restore Ghana's lost forest cover. Deputy Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, Benito Owusubio, at the launch of this year's One Student, One Tree initiative indicated to reduce the effect of climate change, government has resorted to forest and nature-based solutions and want all hands on deck.
Here in Ghana, some 8 million hectares of forest has serious implications for climate change, which has dire consequences to the livelihoods of mankind, and hence the urgent need to make continuous efforts to reverse the trend. The target for this year's Green Ghana Day, which has been slated for June 10th, 2022, that is exactly a week from today, is to plant at least 20 million trees across the country. My dear students, recognizing you as the future leaders of our dear country, we launched the maiden edition of the One Student, One Tree initiative last year at the Accra High School as the students' component of the Green Ghana Day. Today, we are launching the 2022 edition of the One Student, One Tree initiative at the Agri Memorial AME Zion Senior High School here in Cape Coast. We respectfully request all students in Ghana to plant a tree each, grow it, and nurture it to maturity. This you can do, for instance, by tagging your name to each tree that you plant, so that even while you have completed school, your colleagues, especially your friends who will still be on campus, will continue to maintain the trees on your behalf.
On March 1, 2022, President Akufo-Addo launched the 2022 edition of the Green Ghana Day under the theme Mobilizing for a Greener Future. Central Regional Minister Justina Marigoda says the region will once again exceed its target, just as it exceeded its target in last year's exercise.
Today's events will energize our students to develop the spirit of patriotism, gain practical knowledge regarding the life cycle of trees and appropriate nature. The Regional Coordinating Council pledges its maximum support and cooperation to make the project a success. We will continue to foster effective collaboration with all agencies and institutions in order to exceed our target once again in the region. I therefore entreat all of us, especially the Metropolitan, Municipal and District Chief Executives, to champion the cause to ensure effective and active participation of all indigenes and institutions. In furtherance to this, I urge the assemblies to intensify public education on this laudable program by including the chiefs and opinion leaders in their circles.
The One Student, One Tree initiative was launched last year at the Accra High School, and this year's has been launched at the Agri Memorial AME Zion School. Reporting for JoyNews, Richard Kwejenyako, Cape Coast.
And thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse. We'll return shortly after this break. And you're welcome back to The Pulse. Now we're doing a build-up to the World Environment Day. Well, a group of eco-conscious citizens is calling for collective action to ensure that Ghana's forest reserves are protected. This weekend, all like-minded eco-conscious individuals and organizations will mark the World Environment Day, targeted at pushing for transformative action on a global scale to celebrate, protect and restore our planet. As for this year's Only One Earth campaign, eco-conscious citizens say there is a need for urgent policy interventions to enhance government's green agenda. Let's speak to the national co-coordinator of the eco-conscious citizens, GH, Awula Sewa, who's joining us in studio. Awula, it's such a great time to be talking to you. What's the feeling like ahead of the World Environment Day?
Well, the feeling is that World Environment Day shouldn't be just a one-day affair. Every single day of the year, we should be thinking about our environment. And as you know, the theme for this year is only one planet. We only have one Earth. We are not thinking of going to another planet. So we need to ensure that the Earth we have, we keep it in a way that is good for not only ourselves, but for generations to come.
Right. And I'm sure that definitely as we move into that celebration, there are a number of issues, as you are pointing out, that would have to roll out as a country to show up government's Green Ghana agenda. What are some of the priorities that we should be considering?
Well, one of our priorities, if we look at the theme, you know, there are three overarching things. We are looking at global warming. We are looking at, you know, when there's global warming, we also think of our habitats. Right. A lot of the habitats are disappearing, which means that a lot of endangered species, both plants and animals, are dying. We're also looking at pollution, air pollution, pollution of our waters, and pollution of our land. Right. So what it says is that we need to be really focused. One example is our forests. Okay. For example, our forests are our lungs. When we are thinking of pollution, we want clean air. Obviously, the trees have a role to play. Right. So it doesn't make any sense to be losing our forests. We don't have just Achimota forest. We have so many other forests. But
it appears that the Achimota forest is just being subject to... Yes, it's under siege,
and that is why I brought it in. Okay. We can't, on the one hand, be having Green Ghana 10 June and be planting trees, and on the other hand, be declassifying part of the forest. There's a reason why Achimota was made a forest reserve. That need has not gone away. Achimota is supposed to be the lungs of Accra. So why in the world would you be cutting off a portion of your lungs? Does that make any sense? If part of the forest is degraded, what you need to do is to plant trees and restore it. It doesn't make any sense so far as eco-conscious citizens or other citizens can see by declassifying part of the forest and reducing the forest when we have already lost over 80% of our forests.
All across the country?
Yes.
So it means if we talk about Ghana right now, our green cover is receding.
It's receding. We've lost about 80%. If you look at the forests we had when the Gold Coast became Ghana, if you look at the forests we had, our forest reserves, we find out that our forest reserves, we're losing them. And not just our forest reserves, our farmlands. Recently, the Nungwa farms, we are being told that the Ministry of, sorry, not the Ministry of Lands, but rather Forestry Commission. Okay. I'm getting all muddled up. Right. But what I'm trying to say is that Nungwa farms are going to be taken over.
That's the indication.
That's the indication, supposedly to make it more productive. I use the word supposedly. So we need to watch what is actually going on, because we can see the siege on lands all over, whether it's our forest lands, our parks, our green spaces, our Ramsar sites, whatever it is, we seem to be losing them in favor of development. And let's use the word development cautiously, because it is not development to get rid of your green spaces and replace them with concrete. That is not development.
If you look at Accra, for instance, there's this perennial problem of flooding.
Right.
And part of it is being attributed to, the depletion of our forest cover as well.
Absolutely, because forests have so many roles to play. We talked about the air. It also helps us have cooler air, so it's not so hot. It also absorbs some of the water. So if you don't have your forest absorbing the water, you're building helter-skelter everywhere, your drains are blocked, what's going to happen? If you look at even the building regulations, it tells us a plot of land, how much you can build on, because you're supposed to leave some of the land for greenery and some of it for the rain to soak the excess water. But if you go and build everywhere whilst the building authorities look idly by, we do have a problem.
I'm sure that we have enough regulations to check that, but
the problem has never been regulations. Our problem has been enforcement, enforcement. Regulations are there galore. We have enough regulations to make sure that there's sanity. Unfortunately, the regulations are not adhered to. And sometimes we actually remove some of the regulations. If we go back to Achimota Forest,
for instance,
you are actually declassifying it. So when in their wisdom, the whole area was made a protected forest reserve precisely because of what the forest does, and you have decided to declassify it by taking parts out. What exactly are we talking about? You look at Atiwa Forest Reserve.
That's another key area to be on the lookout
yes,
for.
I'm one of the plaintiffs in the case that is in court right now.
Right.
In fact, today was a court date, but it was adjourned because the judge was indisposed. You have Atiwa Forest Reserve. We've been told that apart from being the source of water to 5 million Ghanaians, it also has endangered animal and plant species. When we're talking about World Environment Day, one of the themes are the habitats. As the habitats are destroyed, we lose the endangered species. There are some endangered species which are only found in West Africa, I believe Ivory Coast and Ghana.
Right.
Some of them are at Atiwa Forest Reserve. So why on earth would you go and mine bauxite there when you know, you've been told of the consequences of mining bauxite there? We're not against mining. Well, we're against destroying our environment.
And just before you walked in, we heard of the report of government's agenda to push through one student, one tree policy. That's the indication we're getting. So one student will be advised to or encouraged at least to plant a tree. Okay. Is it the case that, given what's happening in the Tiwa forest and Achimota forest, all of the efforts that are being made by government is being thwarted by giving out this place for development and all of that?
Well, you see, what I would say is that you really need to know why you are doing what you are doing. It's fantastic. I think in the Philippines, you had the one student, one tree. It has had fantastic results. But you see, if you look at those countries, they don't just do things for sound bites or anything like that. They actually committed. And commitment shows in various ways. In my view, you can't be 100% committed if you are, on one hand, bringing out these laudable policies, but on the other hand, supervising the destruction of our forests. So I'm not convinced. I'll be convinced when we decide not to declassify Achimota Forest, where we start restoring the parts of the forest that have been destroyed. I'll be convinced when we get an undertaking that we will not mine bauxite at Atiwa Forest. I'll be convinced when the other forest reserves we have, we begin to say that we're going to stop the encroachments, bulldoze any buildings which are not supposed to be there are there, and begin to protect our forests for generations unborn apart from ourselves. Otherwise, I see these as gimmicks.
But anytime the issue about protecting our environment comes up, the focus almost always is on the greenery. But there are more concerns, even for instance, about noise pollution.
Well, there's so many concerns. I mean, we know, for example, one of the, a growing concern is noise pollution. We had International Day of Awareness regarding noise pollution. We know that noise damages our health. It damages our health. And yet, we are bombarded with noise. It could start with the morning call for worship, a dawn preacher, event centers, the Bola taxis, drinking spots, and the laws are there. And you know, the three agencies have something to do with noise pollution. You have the EPA, you have the local assemblies, and you have the police, because it's a criminal offense. But nothing is done about it. And we are, we are damaging our health by the constant influx of noise. It's just damaging our health. So what we need to do is take a step back and ask ourselves, are we really concerned about the environment? Because the noise doesn't just damage our health, it also affects the animal life. It also affects them. And of course, when we're talking about the environment, we're also talking about our waters, which have been
damaged. In fact, I think just a couple of days ago, or was it yesterday or so, we received a Water Commission report indicating how, of course, illegal mining activities are polluting river bodies, and to the displeasure of even our neighboring countries as well. So it appears that increasingly it's not just about the greenery, but also our
basically they're all interconnected.
Body.
They're all interconnected. And the theme is also interconnected. The reason why they said one word, because what you do locally has international effects. So you're not just damaging, let's say, part of Accra or part of Ghana. You're damaging other parts, because our neighbors are complaining. The waters flow. They don't just stay stagnant in one place. So yes, the water is very important. We are damaging our waters through galamsey, and sometimes even the legal mining. They've got permits. That doesn't mean that they are disposing of everything as they should.
So what you're stressing now is that at times you may be doing it lawfully, and yet you're causing...
Or let me put it this way, you may have a permit that authorizes you to mine. But the permit doesn't allow you to get rid of your waste as you deem fit. There are specified ways in which you get rid of your waste. But when nobody is monitoring, people do what they like. So the fact that they've got a permit does not necessarily mean that everything they're doing is according to the processes they are supposed to follow. And like I said, we have all the laws in Ghana, but what we lack is enforcement. We lack monitoring. So if you're not monitoring, how do you know what they are doing? How do you know how they are disposing of their waste products, which is sometimes going into our waters? And now we have also pollution of the land. Because you see, when you begin to just dispose of your waste anyhow, what do you think is happening to the crops we are growing? Very soon, we will not be able to import crops when they turn around and say that, oh, your whatever it is that we want to export is contaminated, we don't want it. So we need to really be very, very careful about what we are doing to our environment, whether to our waters, whether to our forests, or even air pollution. Because
okay, so for policy intervention, what should be that first starting point where we're supposed to take off from to know that yes, we're on track in protecting our environment?
Well, for me, the first thing is to stop declassifying Achimota Forest. Stop considering mining bauxite in Atiwa Forest. They've already done some exploratory work, which has caused significant damage. And if it's bauxite you want, there's bauxite in other areas. So you don't need to go and destroy pristine Atiwa Forest. It's just not on. And then we need to be serious about the things we do. I mean, just as an aside, planting trees and not ensuring that the trees are protected and leaving the goats to eat them is not particularly helpful. So for the first thing for me, stop declassifying, revoke the EI, and no declassification of Achimota Forest. It's a no-no, so far as we're concerned. That shows some commitment. Because as I'm saying, it's difficult to see our commitment to the environment, our commitment to celebrating, only one earth. When with one hand we are saying, yes, we're going to do this and that, and the next hand we are supervising destruction.
And at the global level, obviously, the coalition is not just targeting Ghana. So at the global level, how can stakeholders collaborate with CSOs and other relevant agencies to achieve that purpose that we're all looking for?
Well, I mean, we all have to come to the realization that, apart from those who want to go to the moon, but those of us who want to stay on planet Earth, we need to do something about it. So everybody, not just in Ghana, all over the world, we need to look at the way we live. And we need to look at the waste we produce. And it's multifaceted. We need to look, for example, you and I, we need to look at making sure that we don't use plastics, because we are looking for a ban on single-use plastics. If you look at all around Ghana, you'd see that the gutters are choked with plastics and so on and so forth. So, for example, in the UK, one step that has been taken is that you now pay for plastic bags. Before the supermarkets, you got the plastic bag free. Now you can buy what they call the bag for life. When it gets used, you can have it replaced. And that has led to a significant drop in plastic bags. In countries like Kenya and I believe Tanzania, they have actually banned single-use plastics.
And there's that big question as to whether or not we should be moving towards that point of completely banning plastics.
I mean, there's no reason why we shouldn't ban plastics. If you look at when our grandfathers, in fact, we need to go back and look at how our ancestors lived. They were more intelligent and wise than we give them credit for. All the things that we find scientific names for, they were doing it. And we didn't have all this global warming. They understood the importance of the forest. That's why they had all sorts of stories to keep people from destroying the forest. They say there's a deity there. If you do this, this and this will happen to you. And people, by and large, kept to it. So we need to go back to how our ancestors lived. And if you notice, they didn't use plastic bags. Plastic bags are relatively new. So we need to say no and find alternatives. For example, we used to go shopping with baskets. Right now, even kinky, I see kinky. I mean, it's just not on. And it's also affecting our health. All these plastics, wrapping the warm kinky in plastics. What exactly do we think that is going inside the food we're about to eat?
But if you look at the demand drive now, are we able to completely wean ourselves off plastics?
You can do. How did Kenya manage it? How did Tanzania manage it? Where there's a will, there's a way. If we decide to ban it, we don't really need the plastics. Ghanaians are so creative. We would find alternatives. I know in other countries, whether Singapore, they actually use banana leaves and plantain leaves. There's a person in Ghana who is using plantain leaves, or I'm not quite sure, or is it corn husks, to make paper bags. And this is a waste product which would be, what shall I say, just a waste product, but she has turned it into something useful. So I think that if we say that from 1st January, plastic bags will be banned, you'd be surprised that would even forget that there was a time when we thought wrongly that we're dependent on plastic bags.
And plastics are contributing to this whole issue about our inability to manage flooding and also wastes in our communities as well. Sure. Is it the case that once we deal with the plastic side, the general issue of waste management will be solved?
It will be reduced. It wouldn't be solved completely, but it will be greatly reduced. But what we have to understand is that we need to manage behavior. If it's not plastics, if it's something else people are dumping into gutters, and if you don't have storm drains or whatever, you're still going to have problems. So we come back to square one. You have so many homes, and you ask yourselves, how is your rubbish disposed of? In sensible countries, every home, the authority comes around weekly or whatever, it collects your rubbish. It's only in countries like Ghana where you yourself source whoever is collecting your rubbish. And some people, the gutters are the way where they dump their rubbish. So you need to do an audit. Come to every single home and business and ask them, where do you dispose of your rubbish? You can't show me receipts of where you go to. We'll get somebody and you pay them. Once you're paying for rubbish disposal, there's no advantage in using the gutter because you are paying for the rubbish to be disposed of. People also burn. And when you're in residential areas and you're burning, they burn plastics, everything, contributing to the air pollution. More people are getting asthma, not only because of the burning, because of where we site petrol stations. Everything is so chaotic. One of the things I'm saying is that maybe we should move the capital from Accra to maybe Kintampo and go and plan a proper green city where you have solar lights, we harvest rainwater, you have spaces which are zones, proper zones.
But that's quite extreme, isn't it? Calling for the national capital
our capital
to be...
was Cape Coast.
Okay.
Our capital hasn't always been Accra. Nigeria managed to move their commercial capital from Lagos to Abuja. If we do it properly, it can be very well managed. Go to a place and this time plan it properly. Where it's a residential area, let it be a residential area. If it's a commercial area, let it be a commercial area. Make sure that every house has harvesting of rainwater. Because right now...
How soon do you feel we need to relocate our national capital?
For me, yesterday, because all this, pressure on prime lands. Remember that we led the campaign against parks and gardens being used to go and build a multi-story office building. Really, who would want to turn a park into a multi-story office building? All the pressure on prime lands is also because, in a sense, Accra is choked. So for me, the time has come to move the capital from Accra. Kintampo is the center of Accra. I'm not saying it has to be Kintampo. Find another place, but this time learn from the lessons of Accra and have a properly planned city. On paper, Accra is well planned, but we have not gone according to the plan. We are building where we like, whether it's a Ramsar site, whether it's a green belt. So long as I find the space, I build. And for most Ghanaians, or let me not say most Ghanaians, for some Ghanaians, forests and greenery are like weeds. They are only there because I'm not ready to build my house. Once I'm ready to build an apartment block, we just get rid of them. And this is something that is not standing us in good stead. We really, really need to consider. So my message is that if we are really serious about the environment, it's not a question of a few gimmicks. Oh, today is World Environment Day. We all jump up and down. Dignitaries do this and that. Green Ghana dignitaries are seen planting trees that the goats might be munching on soon after because we don't protect them. Let's be really serious and do what needs to be done. Revoke this executive instrument. It's not helping anybody. If a family or the original owners of the land have not been compensated, that's an entirely different matter. Justice must be done, do so. But returning part of our lands is not the way to deal with the problem.
We need to go. We're all looking at for that big day during the weekend. What's your expectation on the World Environment Day?
Well, my expectation is that, what I would like is that all take part, but it's not only when the cameras are there, but for the rest of the year. And more importantly, when we plant trees, make sure they are protected and not left for the goats to munch on. And more importantly, I'm appealing to our policymakers to be truly committed to the environment and have a proper commitment not to further destroy our forest reserves. We've lost enough of our forests. Right. We need to restore our forests. Not on one hand be planting trees, on the other hand be classifying a whole tract of land.
Awolasewa, I'm grateful that you've been able to join us. Well, back to our June 3 twin disaster story, and we see many of you sharing your current situation as it's been raining on the 7th anniversary. Well, one organization which helped in the rescue and cleanup efforts during the crisis is waste management company Zoom Lion. Gloria NT is the managing director and has been sharing the company's role and what they are doing going forward.
With respect to Zoom Lion's intervention in managing the June 3rd disaster, what we came up with was to begin dredging, because assessments after the disaster showed that one of the causes was the clogging of the drains. So Zoom Lion began desilting, and that exercise led to the establishment of a company within the Jospon Group called Dredge Masters Company Limited, and up to date they go about dredging, especially along the Kole Lagoon, and that is what has given some relief. Now we can see free flow of water when we have the rains.
Aside that, what else have you done to ensure that we are able to prevent it from happening? If it happens, the impact will be on the lower side.
So aside the dredging, we believe that if citizens have means of disposing of their waste, then the waste will not end up in the drains. So Zoom Lion since then has come up with an exercise or a project, I'll say that's we call the 1 million bin. And the aim is to get every household to have a bin at home so that we practice responsible waste management. And apart from that, we have also introduced new trucks into the system to augment the fleet, because if there's increase in population, which will also result in increase in waste generated, then we also need to increase our capacity. So we have introduced, or we have added on more refuse trucks to take care of the increased refuse in the communal places as well as in the various homes. We have also established the integrated recycling and compost plant that we call the IRECOP, and that is to take care of the segregation, recycling and then composting, so that all the waste that we see here will not end up at the final disposal site. We can get value out of the waste. So we have some plastics, we have some metals that can be recycled and reused. And another intervention is also intensifying of public education. We believe that attitudinal change can do a lot more for us. So we go into the various schools, both the public, primary and the secondary schools. We also have some programs with the universities. We go to churches, communal places to get the message drummed down for us to change our behaviors, which will definitely result in us not dumping waste in places which will end up in the drains. And when we have the rains, we expect that there will be free flow of water. So these are some of the interventions that Zoom Lion has come about. And the way forward for us is to continue with the 1 million bin project. So we are still on, and we expect that citizens will call on us wherever you find yourself in Ghana. Call on Zoom Lion, we'll come home, give you a bin, and we will have an agreement with you to come for it. We are distributing the bins for free, but definitely you have to pay for the lifting. So you register and then we will come and lift for you at a fee. We are also, we've also introduced the mobile transfer stations. We know how difficult it is to site locations where all the refuse trucks, and this is only not for Zoom Lion, we have other service providers who go all the long haul to deposit waste. And we believe that having mobile transfer stations which will receive the waste, compact it and take it to the landfill site is the way to go.
And you're still with us here on The Pulse. But let's talk health now. The Health Minister, Kweku Agyeman-Manu, says the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, cannot be attained without peace. According to Agyeman-Manu, health for peace starts with providing fair and accountable governance and social support systems to the people. It's also about creating equal opportunities for decent livelihoods for all and ensuring adequate security and lives as well as prosperity. The SDGs is a global development policy framework and a universal call to action to end poverty and to protect the planet. Mr. Manu was pledging this support for the World Health Organization's Global Health for Peace initiative.
Madam President, Excellencies, colleague ministers, ambassadors and heads of delegation, conflict situations are characterized by dehumanizing and untold suffering leading to poor health status of the population. Wars and conflicts continue to leave immediate and life-changing physical and emotional scars with consequent negative effects, disruption of livelihoods, human development, and increasing infectious disease burden with its attendant high mortality and morbidity. The world in 2015 signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals, a global development policy framework, and a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity and universal health coverage. These goals cannot be attained where there is no peace. The endorsement of global leaders in September 2019 of the political declaration of the United Nations high-level meeting on universal health coverage shows that there is enough political ambition and commitment by governments to increase health spending, reduce out-of-pocket payment and inequities by strengthening health systems based on strong primary health care. We can harness the immense potential of the youth by equipping them with education and employable skills, leveraging on technology and public-private partnerships for job creation. This will help to reduce the burden of unemployment amongst the youth, which is a security threat. Health for peace starts with providing fair and accountable governance and social support systems to the people, creating equal opportunities for decent livelihoods for all, and ensuring adequate security of lives and property. Madam President, Ghana supports the theme for this year's Assembly, Peace for Health, Health for Peace, and welcomes the WHO's Global Health.
And let's take you to the Central Region now. Some teachers in basic schools there are advocating free supply of sanitary pads to girls at the basic level. Now, the teachers say many girls at the basic level continue to absent themselves from school and in some cases are forced to give sex in exchange of sanitary pads. The situation, they say, is affecting educational outcomes of girls, especially those in the rural areas. The teachers made the appeal as part of the Central Regional Minister's Menstrual Hygiene Advocacy Campaign in selected communities in the Central Region. There's more in this report by Richard Kojonyako.
LAPAG, an interest group of the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana, is made up of all registered and licensed female pharmacists in Ghana. LAPAG is in
the Amasaman cluster of schools will be the 17th cluster to receive support from the Inspire Today Foundation.
I always use Euro because sanitary pad is too expensive.
I use sanitary pad, but sometimes I don't get, so I use newspapers because it's free. I don't buy.
As for me, my mother doesn't have, so I use pieces of cloth.
More than 3,000 girls received sanitary towels, bathing soap, roll-ons, shaving sticks and educational materials to mark this year's World Menstrual Hygiene Day.
There have been instances where girls have even dropped out of school because the school environment have not been made safe for them. And we thank Inspire Today for their contribution in support of our girls in the schools.
Senior manager in charge of corporate communication.
Well, the U.S. Department of State and Dance and Music Exchange Program Group Next Level round up their 2 weeks in Ghana with a musical concert in collaboration with the National Theatre of Ghana. Now, ahead of the event today, the site manager for the Next Level, PS, has been speaking to JoyNews about it.
Next Level, the way I describe it, it's a cultural engagement program. So what I mean by that is cultural engagement program within hip-hop. Hip-hop not just being rapping with people here on the radio, but also just all the disciplines. So we have beat making, dance, rap, as well as graffiti. And cultural engagement, I say, because although we have professional, extra dope artists who come here and teach, at the same time we're learning from the students and sharing things for them to put in their own unique fashion. We just came from Tamale, so we did a week in Tamale and did a concert, and now we're finishing up our week here and have our concert tomorrow at 7. So Accra is a lot of already talented artists, right? So in the class has been a range of people who just first starting all the way to professionals. So our artist educators try to engage with them on the level they're at and just get better. So it's been amazing.
There are a lot of youth around who are doing nothing because there's nothing for them to do. But they have these little skills that we think they can monetize, you know. All they need is just a little guidance. So that's what we are trying to offer them. Friday, you see all the participants from the different disciplines displaying what they have learned over the 4 days.
Do all, what now? This little is dropping missing high. I'm flying now, this are air bars, make me fly, don't fall down. When I touch down, it's a deal, it's a shut down. Bars on bars, got a lock now, it's a lockdown. What you mad for? I'm the question you can answer, I'm the answer. Goats. Don't be your own horse, I know the bread. Mediocrity is a rag. I do this for the black mind, not for the gag. As a matter of fact, the mind is the only goal you have. Facts.
And now, air travelers from the Ashanti and adjoining regions will soon not have to head towards the Kotoka International Airport in Accra before connecting to international flights. This is because the Kumasi International Airport is on the verge of completion as contractors work around the clock to install final finishings required to operationalize the grand edifice, which is expected to process about 1 million passengers annually. My colleague Manuel Cranting was granted exclusive access to the facility and now reports.
So this is the new Kumasi International Airport built to be completed by the end of 2022. Well, details are what we're going to get for you right here as we speak to the resident engineer here on site with ADK Consortium. Grateful said that you could speak to us here on JoyNews. Just briefly explain to us, I mean, well, we hear about Kumasi International Airport and all of that. People think that there's another Kotoka International Airport that is being replicated here in Kumasi. Just a bit of details on the project.
All right, thank you very much for visiting the project. This is a new airport, so to speak. Considering the existing airport, you know, we are building a new terminal, putting an extension onto the existing runway. And this will allow for the new classification of a Cool 4D, which will mean we can handle the critical aircraft of a 737-800. And that has a bigger capacity. And that aircraft can fly you to Europe. So it's an aircraft that can do a 6-hour flight. It means that could take you to Europe, basically.
But let's talk about the details of this particular project. When did it start? And we know it's supposed to end sometime later this year, but just a bit of details of the timelines and how exhaustive really you've gone.
All right, basically there was a phase 2 of this project. The phase 2 of this project was to build a new terminal, and the new terminal is 12,000 square meters on 3 levels. So we have the ground level, the first level, and then the mezzanine level. The mezzanine level is to handle the air bridges. That's the new international standard. That is where the passengers will depart and passengers will arrive. On the ground floor, you will have where you do your normal check-in, and you have some commercial space where there are some restaurants and there's some commercial shops. And then you also have a facility which is the VVIP, which was originally a separate building on the old terminal, but that has all been incorporated into this new terminal. The next floor is the departure level. and that is where you do all your security check-ins and you wait for your aircraft to be called, and hopefully you will get the benefit of going on the escalators and going on the air bridges, which we didn't have before on this Kumasi airport. So basically that is it. And the runway is to do an extension from 1.98 kilometers to 2.320 kilometers.
Well, let's bring it home a bit. Let's bring it home a bit and then talk about the implication of this expansion. I mean, how many check-ins, if you like, passengers, for instance, did you carry in the old terminal, and what will be the the increment when you come into this new terminal?
All right. So basically, the current terminal is running probably about 400 passengers throughput every year, and this new terminal is going to do 100,000 passengers every year. 400,000 every year. This new terminal is going to do 1 million, and it will always have the potential overrun to about 1.5 depending on our operational level, because an airport design is supposed to do a 24-hour service. So currently we are doing only up the window morning 6 o'clock to probably about 8-9ish, but once we go through the process of finishing this one and that window of opportunity is increased, then it will have a capacity to go to about 1.5 million. But the design is to process 200 passengers every hour, and that we have 8 check-in desks, and we have a baggage handling system that has a redundancy of 100%, means that it can handle 500 baggages per hour, and that translates into the 1 million passengers per year. And this is quite new. This is like I said, it's a code 4D, and the code 4D airport is quite a standard and quite big to do this size of number.
People are interested in finding out what is a similarity or similarities, if you want, and perhaps the differences between the Kumasi airport and then what you have at Kotoka, the Terminal 3, or even the old terminal.
All right. Thank you very, very much. I had the benefit of also being the lead project manager on that project, and that project is a 5 million passenger throughput a year, and that is over 50,000 square meters of that on about 5 levels. So that is totally different. That handles what we call the code E. The code E is where you do your 777 aircraft, the Boeing 777, and that is a huge departure. Kotoka International Airport has a runway of 3.4 kilometers, which is about double what we're actually building here. So in terms of Kotoka is big. This is actually nowhere. So we cannot handle the 777s on the Emirates, the British Airways, and the KLMs, because those are the code E aircrafts, and they are quite huge. In terms of passenger capacity, there's probably about 300, between 250 and 300, depending on the configuration of the aircraft. But this is only going to have a limitation of 200.
But I mean, you've talked about the downsides. There must definitely be advantages, with introducing an international airport here in Kumasi.
All right, basically an international airport is supposed to be some facility that can allow you quicker travels from region and locations to locations. So there are different categories of international airports, and that this will fit into one of the categories, and what are called the code 4D. So a code 4D category is in the region of 1 million to 2 million passengers, and this is quite sizable enough to be able to do that. So I'm just saying that in the future, British Airways can come here, but they will only have to change their aircraft to a 737-800. And as I mentioned, Turkey Airlines do that. What they bring to Accra is 737-800. Kenya Airways does it, and TAP Portugal also does it. TAP Portugal brings the 320s, which is the Airbus 320, and this is all in category of the code 4D. Yes.
So just paint a picture for me, the level of technological inclusion that you have here. In other international airports, we're gradually moving into an automated system where self-service, you go, you slap your passport on a screen, and then you don't have to necessarily interface with a teller and all of that. Tell me the level of technological interfacing that you're doing.
All right. International airport designs always lends itself to the ICAO standards. And to say ICAO is the global international organization that maintains and ensures that airport facilities are up to scratch. The moment you start talking about doing an international airport, you need to meet the requirements. You can't shortchange the process, and that there are requirements you need to follow. So for instance, self-check-in facilities are here, but the limitations of security is also something that you need to bear in mind, that if you are doing self-checking, what then it means is that if the passenger doesn't have any interface with the check-in, then it means that he can just go through the process. We have issues with visas and the likes, and all those self-checking facilities means that you will get to where you are now doing your final process through security, and you'll be held back, but you have already had checked in. And that in this system we are having a combination and having a system where you will also be able to be screened, further screened, before you are allowed even to do the check-in. So the facilities are here, but it has to be done on a time basis to understand the security levels around the country, and to say people can just do self-checking. These days you have facilities where you can check in at home and only drop your baggage. We have all those facilities here, and that if you do your normal checking, you go up onto the next level where you go through your central screening, and the central screening facilities at that level is also international. All the systems they are using are international systems. So some of the manufacturers of these security systems are global, and that is not a Joe Block being manufactured somewhere around KJTR or anything. So it's all international standards, and that is basically what we are doing. The facilities for sitting area is also per the design of the aircraft. One configuration we use is that if you are doing an aircraft of 200 passengers, you need to provide seating for 80% at any particular time. So all these facilities have been provided in, and it's exactly on the basis where we are doing 200 passengers throughput per hour. So the facilities are in. Further on, because of the security level, these days you have what you call aero bridges or passenger boarding bridges, and that allows you, once you get onto airside, you don't interface with airside or anybody. You are in a restricted envelope where you only proceed into the aircraft. In terms of the boarding bridges too, every airline has its own provision. Some airlines will require that by the time the aircraft docks, the boarding bridge needs to, within 15 minutes, there should be a contact with the aircraft for passengers to come out of, begin to disembarking. So these are all the facilities, and through the designs, that is what we have ensured, that the contractor is not shortchanging the client in terms of any limitations.
You're a resident engineer with the consultant.
Yes.
Okay, and that's ADK Consulting. Yes. I would like for us to talk about your quality assessment as consultants and what you've seen. But at this point, we're in May ending of 2022. What's the timeline for ending the entire project, and where are we? Are we still within, project schedule?
Okay, I think one basic constraint that we have on this, the total development, that is the phase 2, phase 3, was to do a migration. From the project inception, there is a need to demolish the entire existing Kumasi Airport facility, because like I said, we are building a new terminal. So the constraint was to ensure that we can migrate the old terminal into here, and that will allow for the final part of the phase 3. Currently we are running concurrently on the phase 2, phase 3. So once we migrate them into here, we will then be able to finish the phase 3 works. So on the phase 2 works, we anticipate to go live in November. What then means is that there are a lot of technicalities to actually taking over a project in an airport environment, because we have what we call site acceptance test, and we have what we call the ORAT. The ORAT is what we call operational readiness airport transfer. So it means that the contractor will have to build his contract and ensure that all facilities within the terminal are working, and that we will go through a process with the client to do what they call the SAT. It's where all systems will be tested, training will be given to the staff of the company, Ghana Airport, and that Ghana Airport would then accept to take over the terminal building. Once they take over the terminal building, there's a process of the ORAT which I mentioned, and that is when they actually do a simulation. And the simulation is intended to bring in passengers. Assume you are flying, assume you are traveling, assume you are arriving, so that you go through that process, and it's a simulation process. It's what we would do to ensure that the terminal is robust enough, the design and the construction is robust enough. And after that ORAT process is when we will do the go live. So the contractor would have handed over the job at the end of the site acceptance, and that the client will then be able to go live at the end of the ORAT. So we are intending that the contractor will finish his works at the end of June, and then that is the SAT, and then we will do the ORAT, which is on a 120-day program, and that takes us to end of October. So we are hoping that we'll go live on the terminal in November, and that will allow us to then finish the phase 3 works. The phase 3 outstanding works basically is the air traffic control tower, and then also to do an emergency access road which will go from the fire station, which is also abutting the control tower, to allow the firefighting vehicles to go onto the runway in case of any emergency. And we are seeing that probably to the end of the year, or maybe same way January, where it would then be. So in a nutshell, the entire project would then be finished by January, I will say. The total by January 2023, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see, and then of course, and then we'll start full capacity processing about 500 passengers every hour.
No, they go 200 passengers every hour.
Okay, with 500 luggage. Okay.
Yes, because if you still give every passenger 2 luggages, and on the 200 you will expect at least 400, but it has a redundancy capacity to do 500 every hour. Okay. And that's why I said that you can even do. It has a redundancy of 1,000, so you can still process an hour and a portion, if you understand what I mean. But they are all staggered. The timelines are staggered. So as people are processing, within an hour you can do 500 bags.
This must definitely open Kumasi up for a lot of economic activities. And you talk about expats now from Europe and so on, now having to touch down directly in Accra and interface with the Kumasi Ashanti regional community proper. What are you envisaging in that light?
All right, I think on the commercial point and the business point with the client, there are some statistics that goes to support the point that probably between about 35 to, let's say, 55% of travelers that arrive in Kotoka find their way up north in Kumasi, Brong-Ahafo, and the like. So I think what this will do is that it will also ease some pressure off, and if the airlines find it expedient to do business to Kumasi, it will then also open Kumasi. It shortens the time of travel, and then also as Kumasi then becomes more vibrant in terms of what it is, it will allow free movement. And I'm sure on the international side there could be some travels between Ghana and Burkina Faso and the West Africa, and also from here to Togo. So you don't have to go through Benin and Nigeria to go through to Nigeria. You might also don't be able to do it from here, because I'm sure it opens up to also flight from Nigeria and wherever.
But what, because the air traffic control is in the phase 3 and looking to begin operation from phase 2, would there not be any operational challenges?
No, currently on the discussions that we are doing, the current control tower will be able to handle the operation before we finalize the phase 3 project. So we don't envisage any project, any issue at all. In terms of ATC, air traffic control, you will always have to ensure that you are fully installed and you migrate through a process of final commissioning before you decant. So what will happen is that once the new one is finished, the new one is going to have new equipment, and then we need to set it up, and it will only be a window of maybe half an hour to switch to that new control tower, and then now begin the decantation, which is the decommissioning of the old ATC control tower.
I see. So in a space of what, between the end of 2018 to latest the beginning of 2023. That's what, give or take some 4 years of construction work. How much is this costing?
Basically, we had a phase 2 project of about 66 million, circa 66 million euros. And then the phase 3 is close to about 59 million. So it's a total of about 126 million for the entire phase 2, phase 3.
And all of this is being undertaken by which company?
Contractor Construction UK Limited.
Okay. And as with ADK Consortium as your
Consortium as the partners.
Interesting sites there. And that's all we have for you here on The Pulse. I am Blessed Sogah. Log on to myjoyonline.com. We have updates for you there. Bye-bye for now.